Hello, hello my friends. Welcome to another episode of Dulcimerica, and my name is Bing Futch. Thanks for joining me here. Mountain Dulcimer fun, workshop time. We got a lot of very interesting things to be sending in your direction, so thank you very much for watching. And I want to give a little shout out to Jan Camper, one of my patrons on Patreon. She pledged in at the level that got a little shout out on Dulcimerica along with some other goodies. You can find out more about Patreon and how to become a part of the art at patreon.com/BingFutch. Thank you so much, Jan. I appreciate your support and your encouragement. Let's see what we're going to do. I think today we're going to do some chord melody. Chord melody is when you play a tune and you've got the melody worked in there, but you've got chords moving along with it too. And there is an art to that. It's done on all kinds of instruments. And on the mountain dulcimer, the same principles and techniques apply, and I'm going to talk to you now about how to make that happen. Number one rule, and I've mentioned this before on the program, number one rule when it comes to arranging songs is that melody is king. The melody should always take priority, and everything you do from chords to rhythm should support that melody. So keeping that in mind, the number one thing you want to do when you're figuring out a tune is to find the melody. Just simply find it somewhere on the fretboard. Whether you want to play across the strings or move all the way up and down the fretboard, you basically just want to make sure you have all the notes necessary. Because if you've got the notes, chances are, the probability is very high, you've got the chords as well. So today we're going to work with the tune Amazing Grace, a timeless classic. And what we're going to do here is, oh, did I break this pick? I sure did. Been using this pick an awful lot. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Going to do it in the key of D. We're in DAD tuning. And so I can find the melody without having to move too far from this area down here, this first position area. So I'll go ahead and I'll pick it through, starting with the middle string. Okay, easily enough done. We've got the melody there. Now, there are a couple of real quick tricks I want to mention here, and they're songwriting tricks. I don't know if people thought about this stuff back in the day when they were writing songs like Amazing Grace or old classic traditional tunes like Danny Boy, but you've got a melody and you've got a key for the song. So our key is D, and so immediately the first chord of the song here is D. And if you pull the melody out of the associated scale, D major scale, it's really going to fit nicely over the top of that D major chord. There are exceptions, and of course there are scales, different scales that share notes, so different keys can have the same note. But nonetheless, if you've got a chord, go to the associated scale, and if you write a melody that uses those notes, it's really going to sound awesome. Not only that, but an easily singable melody is one that often incorporates notes that are featured in the chord itself. So you're able to play the chord while also playing a piece of the melody at the same time, an element of the melody. If that melody is on the middle string or bass string or something like that, it can get buried in the mix. So the rule of thumb here, besides making sure the melody is king, is also making sure that the melody is the highest note being played in the chord. When we start this off, we're on the melody string. Sorry, we're on the middle string coming over to the melody string. So therefore I can strum across all three strings and know that the melody note is always going to be the highest note played in that chord. But what happens when I come back over to the middle string? I'm changing to a G major chord there. So I come in with a G major chord. Now, technically speaking, I really should just be playing the bass string and the middle string. Why is that? Because the melody is actually B. It's actually right there at the first fret on the middle string. And that goes to D. Sorry, A. So what's going to happen here is I play the G chord, 3, 1, 0, but I hammer on that B, which kind of makes it stick out a bit. So I'm not actually following the rule right there. My ears have fallen and they can't get up. Anyway. But you can get away with it there. So use your ears. If the melody's buried, then just play a partial. And then we go to our next deal there. So let me go ahead and add the chords in for you, show what's going on. We're going to do some other stuff here besides just playing the chord melody. We're just going to have a lot of fun with Amazing Grace, actually. So let me do that again. Getting into our A major chord here. Back to our G chord. Notice how I picked through that. I'm picking through it, so I'm making those notes pop out and make them a little bit louder than the chords that are supporting them, which is another trick to making sure that melody is king. All right. That's very, very simple. Now, for those of you with 1.5 frets, let me show you something really cool that you can do with Amazing Grace. We're going to add some 7th chords in. These are dominant 7th chords, so they'd be written D with a 7 next to it, and we'll have an A with a 7 next to it. But I'll show you some other things we're going to do here. At the 1.5 fret, we've got F on the bass string and on the melody string. We have C on the middle string. And so in order to bring a nice full-fledged D7 chord, that would actually be D, F sharp, A, and then C natural. We're adding the flatted 7th of the scale. And but we're only going to play 3 notes here. And we're going to do it by playing open, 1.5, and 2. So we're playing D, C, and F sharp. We are not playing A, but we don't need to play A because its presence is suggested by the relationship of the other notes to each other, or their intervals. It's a bit of weirdness that you'll get into when you're playing a 3-stringed instrument trying to play fancy chords. Okay, so open, 1.5, and 2. We'll give you a 7 chord. So now when you come around and play, that D7 chord is going to lead very nicely into the G chord like this. It's really neat. 7th chords are like a little kiss on the cheek of that chord as it leaves and becomes another chord. And you can hear the resolution really nicely if you go from D7 to G. And also watch my fingers. They're just moving. They're moving in opposite directions, and they're only moving just a little bit. You get a real nice resolution from D7 to G. 7th chords create musical tension, and music is largely about tension and release. It makes for more interesting music and emotional music. Listen to a G7 chord resolving up to a D major chord. G7 chord is going to be open 1, 1.5. You can just hear the tension and then the release. Kind of cool. So let me go back from Amazing Grace. here's where we're going to get a little tricky. I'd like to make this an A7 chord so that that A7 is going to resolve nicely back into D major. An A7 chord, and once again a seventh chord is a basic major chord with a flat seventh attached to it. So in the case of A major, we have A, C sharp, and E, and we want to add G natural as the fourth note. And look at this, we have our E, we have our C sharp, we have A for our A major chord. Now I'm going to drop the A from the fourth fret out of the picture, drop it down to 3 on the melody string, which is where the G natural is. And voila, we have an A7 chord that has not a single A in it. That's kind of fun, isn't it? It's called a rootless voicing. We've taken the root of the chord out of the picture, but it still sounds like what it's supposed to sound like. Kind of neat. So that A7 is going to go very nicely into D. Listen to this. Nice tension and release there. So after you establish the melody, I come over and do a little arpeggio work on the bass and middle string, and then come back to the melody string to add in that flat seventh. And then I continue on with the tune. Seventh chords, a very, very short introduction for some of you, maybe a refresher for others as well. Now, what are we going to do next? I'm going to do a chord substitution to make the ending a little bit more interesting. A chord substitution is when you take a chord that's in the song and you replace it with something else that's going to make a very interesting change of mood or feeling. And the basic rule for chord substitutions is whatever chord you've got there with those 3 notes, the other chord that you substitute and replace this chord with, as long as it shares 2 of the same notes, you've got a very, very nice substitution. The easiest way to find this is to know where your relative minor is, and that's going to be the 6th note of every single scale. Let's take our D major scale, for example. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. Now, if you build a note off of the 6th note of the scale, or build a chord off of the 6th note of the scale, you're going to get a naturally occurring minor chord. The rule is, built off of the 1st, 4th, and 5th notes of the scale, you'll get a major chord. Build off the 2nd, 3rd, 6th notes of the scale, you'll get a minor chord. Build off of the 7th note of the scale, you'll get a diminished chord. Basic rules there. And that's naturally occurring. But if you build that chord off of the 6th note of the scale, in this case B, we'll have a B minor. That B minor is going to share 2 of the same notes that D major does. Take a look at this. We've got D, F sharp, and A. We've got B, D, and F sharp. The 2 common denominators are D and F sharp. So a B minor will work in the place of a D major. And listen to what it does to the ending of Amazing Grace. Instead of a D, I'm going to play a B minor here. Isn't that cool? I know you've heard that before when people do go to B minor as opposed to D. What's happening there is a chord substitution, and now you've got the rules on how to make that happen. Let's add a little bass walk down in there as well. We're dealing with a 1-4-5 chord progression built off the 1st, 4th, and 5th notes of the scale, D, G, and A. A lovely thing that happens very, very easily when we're going from D major to G major is we can do a bass walk up the bass string from D up to G, and then back down to D again. Sounds a little bit like Lean on Me, doesn't it? Anyway, I digress. So that walk up there is a lot of fun. So what we can do is we can end Amazing Grace with a bit of a detour by way of our 4 chord G major. So I'll go. So I've walked down, but I've also put some other elements in there. First of all, we started with a G at the beginning of the walk down. I walked the bass down one more. What we have there is a D/F sharp chord, or a slash chord. It's a D with an F sharp as the root, and then we're playing F sharp at the second right there. And then I walk down to our A. I'm using 1-on-1, and then open for our D. So we have a nice walk down that also is chord melody. Very nice indeed. The last thing I'll show you here, if you have a 1.5 fret, is you can sass things up a little bit by using your blue notes at the 1.5 fret. These are all the flatted notes that are in our, not all the flatted notes, but there are 2 of the flatted notes that are in our D major scale. So you can do a lot of sliding up from the flat note up into your normal note. Always sounds really good. So I'm going to do a little bit of an improv here and show you how much more fun you can have with this, and then I'll play everything together and layer it in and show you how we can make a piece of music definitely something that comes to life, grows, and takes you on a little journey. I'll just go ahead and play the whole thing now. I'm going to throw that sass in at the end though. Here we go. And that was just sort of a manic trip down deep into the heart of doing some chord melody, learning where to put that melody so you can keep it nice and prioritized at the top of your chord, how to add some 7th chords in. And by the way, you don't have to have a 1.5 fret. You can play your A7. You can also add in, if you're playing D, you can come here with a thumb like that and pull that C, that flat 7, in on the bass string at the 6th fret. It's a bit of a stretch, but it's worth it for the tone you get. We also talked a little bit about chord replacement, chord substitution, a little walk down on the bass and how to flesh that out, and how to use your 1.5 fret to capture the blue notes and sass up your arrangement. All different things that you can do to have a lot of fun with the things that you are working on your mountain dulcimer. So thank you very much indeed for tuning in, and watch for more workshops of this nature as we go on throughout whatever month this is. I know what month it is, but if I say it, it dates it. Not that the snowflake Mickey Mouse ears give anything away. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, folks, this is Bing Futch. Play a little every day and have fun. We'll see ya.